My true story, from Georgia. At brunch, my DIL introduced me as just the nanny. I smiled. The next day, I sold the house they lived in. I arrived at 11 o'clock sharp, the sun high and forgiving, but my heart trembled like the thin crust beneath my feet. In my hands, I held a silver tray stacked with warm golden croissants, my secret recipe, light and buttery, the way my own mother taught me in that tiny kitchen back in Macon. Each pastry was a testament to my care, my love, my attempt to belong in this house that I had helped buy, raise, and sustain. I stepped into the dining room, and the laughter stopped just long enough for me to feel my presence, or lack of presence, fully. The space was impeccably set for brunch. Crystal flutes shimmered with mimosas, plates of smoked salmon, smoked trout, fruit displays beckoning like promises. A long mahogany table stretched beneath a glittering chandelier. Friends in fine clothes exchanged pleasantries near the sideboard where charcuterie and quiche waited, every detail chic, every guest expected. Except me. That's when I heard her, my daughter-in-law, her voice crisp like the linen napkins she arranged, leaning into her friends and lowering her tone just enough to exclude me, but loud enough for them all to hear. She was the nanny when my husband was little. She took good care of him, but now she is a bit forgetful. She is still living here, I guess, for appearances. My chest tightened. My hand hovered over the tray, my own offering dismissed as if it belonged in the servants' wing. They laughed together. I stepped forward, placing the tray down gently on the marble countertop. My heel clicked against the floor. She pivoted gracefully, her smile sweet like poison. "Remember to leave early, ma'am. We are hosting a party tonight, and you know how guests get confused." I swallowed. My ears stung. I nodded, lips pressed to hold a smile that refused. She continued, voice polished to a sheen. "Here, take this," and she slipped a crisp $20 bill into my hand. "Just pick up some snack bites. Don't eat off the buffet too much." My fingers closed around the envelope, its prioritization clear. I was a guest with a stipend, allowed but never welcomed, a helper, a paid extra, not family. I felt the weight of their judgment. The slight curl of her lips, the way the guests glanced my way, murmuring condolences. How nice of her to contribute. So kind. Their expressions told me what words could not. Here lies a guest, swelling with delusions of belonging in a home that is not her own. My mother's croissants sat untouched. My own son sat across the room, smiling at a coworker's joke. He noticed me briefly and offered a glance. No hospitality, no apology, only that familiar look of polite distance. The son I had read bedtime stories to, celebrated graduations with, and at whose wedding I had handed him the rings years ago. He did not move. I did not ask. I took a shallow breath and repeated quietly to myself, "Mother is fine. Nothing can stop her." My eyes flicked to the chandelier, then to the glittering display of food. I thought of the late nights I spent keeping the house warm during cold Atlanta freezes, the years I worked part-time jobs to cover taxes and utility bills so they could focus on careers. I thought of the photo of me and my young grandson in front of that very table, all smiles and innocence, posted on their mantel once. Now no photo remained, and the croissants stood alone, awkward and unclaimed. No one offered me a plate. No one said thank you. A hush followed me as I walked to the far corner, my tray in hand. I watched the party swirl around me, wine poured, stories exchanged, laughter rising and falling like waves, unaware that the tide had turned and washed me aside. My daughter-in-law glanced at the time, then at me, her eyebrow arched in subtle disdain as if to say, "Isn't it time for you to go?" She turned back to her guests as though I had already left. My pulse thumped in my ears. I clutched the edges of the tray as though it were a lifeline. Inside, my mind shook. Once this had been my home. Once laughter had been my own family's. I brushed a stray lock of silver hair from my face, set my shoulders straight, and gathered my doubts beneath a calm surface. My inner voice spoke quietly, and I took comfort in it. Mother is fine. Nothing can stop her. I studied their faces. Polished, amused, oblivious to the cruelty they had woven as naturally as tablecloths. That fluttering in my chest settled into something firmer. Resolve. Yes. I had been treated as an afterthought, as a prop in a staged life. But my value, my worth, did not vanish overnight. I was still the woman who gave every last cent she had to build this home. I still held the keys, literally and figuratively. My gaze locked on the buffet table. I would not help myself. I would not accept crumbs. My pastry tray was my proof, my offering, and it deserved respect. I set the tray down directly in front of her, where her hand had touched me just moments before. The room fell silent. Champagne poured. Voices paused. My heart drummed a measured cadence, and I said, softly but firmly, "I will take these back." I turned and walked out. No goodbyes, no excuses. I did not look back again. Outside, the sunlight was sharp and clear. In that first breath of freedom, I felt lighter, like a chapter had closed. I wrapped the tray and its uneaten croissants in a linen napkin, porch light turning them to warm gold. I carried them to my car, every step steady. In the front seat, I set them beside me as though they had always belonged. And in that clarity, I whispered, "Mother is fine. Nothing can stop her." Under the soft haze of memory, the days blur into shades of effort, struggle, and hope. When my son told me he had found the perfect house in the northern suburbs of Atlanta, my heart swelled with pride. It was a modest 3-bedroom home in a quiet cul-de-sac, with a dogwood tree in the front yard, and a screened-in porch that caught the morning sun. He had dreams, big ones, but no credit history yet to anchor them. He and his young wife had just finished school, scraping by on internships and early career jobs, and needed a financial backer. That backer was me. I emptied every savings bond I had. I called 3 old friends from church and quietly asked for short-term loans. I even pawned the heirloom necklace my mother had given me when I turned 21, an act I never admitted to anyone. With trembling hands and a determined heart, I brought the down payment to the realtor's office, and when the dotted line appeared, I signed as the primary owner, not because I needed recognition, but because their bank required a solid co-signer. We all agreed it was temporary. Once we build our credit, we'll refinance in our names, my son said, hopeful. They moved in first. I followed 2 weeks later. Once the plumbing was updated and the carpets cleaned, I took the smallest room, near the laundry, and converted it into my own little haven. I did not need much, just a window, a shelf for books, and a sense of purpose. And I had plenty of that. I paid the first year of property taxes. I called roofers when hail punched holes in the shingles that first spring. I stayed up at night with the baby when he ran a fever of 103, holding his little body to mine while his mother cried from exhaustion in the other room. I cooked, I cleaned, I clipped coupons and watched local sales to keep our bills manageable. I even gave them my old car when theirs broke down during a cold snap in February. I told everyone at church that we were building something, together, and for a while it felt like we were. I watched my son finish his MBA, walking across the stage in his navy robe, holding my hand before the ceremony and saying, "I couldn't have done this without you, Mom." His wife clung to his other side, their baby nestled in her arms. That photograph still sits in a shoebox under my bed. It used to be on the mantel until one day, quietly, it disappeared. After his graduation, things shifted, subtly at first, like rearranged furniture you only notice when you trip. They started referring to the house as ours when guests visited, no longer including me in those statements. "We bought it a few years ago," his wife would say, glossing over the actual ownership. I never corrected her, not in front of the company. They stopped asking my opinion on repairs. I would find handymen wandering through the kitchen or measuring windows, never having been told they were coming. When I asked gently, my daughter-in-law said, "Oh, we didn't think you'd be interested in that kind of stuff." My son just smiled and said, "Don't worry, Mom, we got it." I started receiving fewer invitations to family dinners. They had their own friends, their own plans, their own rhythms. Even the baby, now a boy of 4, stopped calling me Grandma. He called me old hag sometimes, as if I were a guest visiting too long. One afternoon, I overheard a conversation I was not meant to hear. My daughter-in-law was on the phone, laughing. "We just keep her here because it helps with taxes and all," she said. "Yeah, she thinks she's still part of the plan, bless her heart." I sat in my room that night, the one with the window and the worn quilt, and stared at my checkbook. My name was still on the deed. I still paid half the utilities. But emotionally, legally, spiritually, I had been erased. That winter, when the gutters froze and cracked, they called a contractor without asking me. When I tried to speak up, My son patted my shoulder gently and said, "Let us handle it, Mom. You've done enough. Done enough." As if there were a finish line to motherhood, to care, to dignity. I began to feel like a ghost in the house I helped build. They spoke around me, moved past me, arranged their lives with growing circles that no longer included me. I became the nanny, the silent fixture, the legacy they would eventually edit out. And yet every month, I wrote my half of the mortgage check. I still bought groceries. I still picked up prescriptions when needed. I believed that one day they would remember, that love would return like spring does after a long winter. But winters in Georgia can be deceptive. They look soft, but the cold cuts deep when you do not expect it. And that cold had settled not in the walls of the house, but in the hearts I once thought I knew. So I waited. I gathered strength. I remembered every late-night feeding, every tuition payment I covered, every time I said yes when my bank account said no. I folded each memory into a quiet truth. I had been loyal, but loyalty did not guarantee love. It did not guarantee respect. They believed I was soft, that my silence was ignorance, not grace. But I had built this house on more than cement and contracts. I had built it on sacrifice, on blood, on hope, on prayer. And now, that foundation was cracking. Not because of me, but because they had forgotten who laid the bricks. I opened Facebook one chilly morning, just to check on my grandson's school recital video, and felt a sudden heaviness in my chest. I tried to scroll through the Johnson family photos, but their profile was unavailable to me. I had been blocked. At first I blinked, sure there must be a mistake. I refreshed, still blocked. My chest tightened and I felt a wave of unfamiliar shock. A few minutes later, through a mutual friend's feed, I noticed a photo from their Christmas party. The Johnsons smiling by the fireplace, stockings and baubles included, but no me. I zoomed in, carefully examining the edges of the photo until I noticed that where I once stood, offering my homemade fruitcake, there was an empty space. The caption read, "Just us, no extras." My stomach knotted. I could not believe it. I had been talking to them for the last decade, even before they got married. I had listened to their tears, their joy, and now I was erased with no explanation. I closed my laptop and sank into the faded quilt at the foot of my bed. The silent accusation echoed. I was not family. Later that afternoon, while straightening the living room, I heard them. My daughter-in-law talking on the phone while stacking books, her voice sharp and low, yet clear enough to reach me. I pretended to dust. She laughed. Wry, cruel laughter. "She's suffocating," she said. "I told the little one to just call me Mom. Don't let them know she's blood. It makes it easier." I paused. Blood. The word punched through every fiber of my being. I had borne that child's father, held him through fever and heartache. I had baked cookies for them, mailed holiday cards, and they wanted to hide me, erase me, pretend I didn't belong. Her next words froze me in place. "We're building a case, you know. Gathering evidence that she's not all there. A hospital visit, a few red flags, and boom, we can get her committed. Old age is the perfect disguise." I gripped the edge of my feather duster, hearing the words again. Committed. As though I were a charity case, a problem to be solved, not a person to be loved. I left the room quietly, the sound of my satin slipper the only proof I had been there. My heart pounded as if it was trying to escape my chest. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan. I tried to count breaths, but each inhale slid past me like a breath on a cold window pane. Committed. It was a word no daughter or child should ever whisper about a mother. I gently rolled onto my side and clasped my hands under my chin, thinking of my mother's own hands, how she raised us on trust and warmth. I realized I had trusted the wrong promise, that blood would never fade, that love would not dry up. In the days that followed, I began noticing signs. The front door was always locked behind me and rarely opened for small things, a frozen pitcher, a misplaced pair of glasses. The house felt sterile and quiet. I had once taught Sunday school lessons in this living room. Now, I was afraid to sneeze. The telephone stopped ringing. My credit card, which I used for shared groceries and co-op expenses, was suddenly rejected. They said the card was expired. They did not tell me. Whenever I asked about the card, my daughter-in-law tutted and said, "I took care of it, Mom. Don't worry about your mind." My son would look at me with sorrowful eyes and whisper, "Mom, just let it go. We've got all this insurance now. We handle it." It felt like I was being smothered by their indifference. Worse, by their calculation. A mortgage signed, a weekend breakfast ignored, a hand-me-down chauffeured away. In the space where forgiveness might have lived, there was only strategy. They were maneuvering, arranging, and positioning. I had already told myself I would hold back, wait for them to see, to remember, to invite me back when they realized their mistake. But when I heard the phrase hospital visit whispered as casually as grocery lists, the nesting instinct that had shaped my life rebelled. I was not a charity case. I was not a secret. I was their mother, their grandmother, a living being who deserved honesty, respect, and space to make my own choices. So I began making notes. In a spiral-bound notebook next to my bed, I wrote dates, times, words, phrases. The Facebook deletion, the Christmas photo caption, her words about suffocation, the plan. I kept the florist's receipt from the Christmas wreath I left for them at Thanksgiving. I kept the bank card and pay stubs, showing utilities and cable I still paid. Every detail would matter. Each morning I sat at the kitchen table by the window, drinking tea, looking out at the dogwood tree that bloomed every April. It was a constant among shifting seasons. I told myself, "This is your new foundation. You will outlast this. You will not fade quietly." I called an attorney, one I once drove to a meeting when his car broke down. He remembered me at once, his voice soft but firm. "You will not be silenced, Mrs. Johnson." And that night I slept. Not in peace, but in survival. I had realized what they tried to take from me: identity, belonging, dignity, and what I could still hold, the truth. And in this, I began to stand again. I arrived at my grandson's 4th birthday party, clutching a wooden tray of freshly baked pastries. The croissants were warm, still butter-soft from the oven, and I had spent the entire morning perfecting each swirl of dough. I walked into the living room, bright in balloons and streamers, where little feet pitter-pattered and parents laughed over coffee. The party was lively, sweet with childish laughter and chatter, so I carried my tray forward, past the paper banners that read "Happy Birthday, Samuel," and set it carefully down on the buffet table. I looked up, expecting a smile, or at least a nod of appreciation. Instead, I saw her, my daughter-in-law, her lips curving into a polite smile that didn't reach her eyes. She turned to her friends, voice low but sharp. "Oh, look, our nanny is trying her hand at baking." She laughed, not with warmth, but with the kind of luxury that comes from power. I felt my breath catch, my fingers tightening around the tray. I caught her meaning: nanny, helper, someone whose efforts could be dismissed with mild amusement. Then I heard my son's footsteps behind me. He reached past me to grab the tray, his hands sweeping it away without a word. He walked it to the kitchen pantry and dumped the contents into a garbage bin. I heard the thud of pastry hitting plastic, the echo of banality that crushed what I had made with care. For a moment I stood frozen, knees weak, stomach heavy. I watched him bring the tray back empty and set it aside without meeting my eyes. The sharp gaze from his wife lingered on my face, as though it were an accessory she no longer wanted. A hush rippled among the adults. A few guests smiled awkwardly, caught between social manners and discomfort. A child toddled over and reached for the bin's edge, peering at the discarded pastries and pulling a silent frown. Then I heard my grandson's voice, small and puzzled. "Mommy, why is Grandma not sitting with us?" My heart dropped. I turned to them, trying to steady my voice. "He is asking why I am not at the table," I said softly. My daughter-in-law sighed, patronizing. She directed her words not at the child, but at me. "Because no one sits and eats with strangers." The words ricocheted inside my head. Strangers, not Grandma. I looked back at the child, my grandson, giggling earlier, now quiet, confused, his little brow furrowed. I swallowed the hurt roaring in my chest and forced a thin smile. My fingers shook until I clenched them into fists. My daughter-in-law turned to brush hair behind her ear, dismissing me completely. My son's shoulders were stiff as a soldier's at attention, unyielding in its silent refusal to defend me. I felt the world shift under my feet. Everything I had invested, years of care, nights tending fevers, baking school lunch cookies, giving up promotions to watch recital rehearsals, collapsed into that moment. My identity crumbled in public view, dismissed with a chuckle and a gesture. I was erased. I closed my eyes, feeling tears that refused to come. My heartbeat drummed in my ears, yet I chose stillness. I would not scream, I would not run, I would not beg. I would claim my dignity in silence. "Happy birthday, my love," I said to him, kissing his cheek. My voice stayed steady, though I felt brittle. I turned and walked away, the heels of my shoes clicking on the hardwood floor. The party moved on without me, the laughter, the chatter, the guest mothers cooing over ribbons and gifts, as if I were vapor, extracting crumbs of acknowledgement. Outside, the Georgia humidity pressed against my coat as though to hold me in place. I stepped onto the porch and slid the tray off my arm, setting it down with careful deliberation. I could feel the layers of despair and rage settling in my stomach, slow, serious, heavy. And then I made a decision. I folded the tray into its original linen cloth, carrying it out beyond sight of the house. I walked to the red dirt along the bamboo in the backyard, pressed the cloth into the soil, and covered my pastries with earth, hidden, begun to decay, just like the respect I had given so many years ago. Afterward, I walked to my car, each step a promise. I slid into the seat and held the steering wheel, eyes closed. I let the silence speak. I will not matter less. I will not fade away. I did not cry out. I did not beg. I did not even cry. Instead, I honored myself by stepping back and recognizing what happened. And I resolved that this moment would mark a shift. I would rise again, stronger, surer, unstoppable, not for revenge, but for reclamation of the woman I had always been. In my rearview mirror, I saw the party continue, laughter floating out the windows. I refocused on my reflection, stoic, determined, not forgotten, and I whispered to my own reflection, "Mother is fine, nothing can stop her." That night, I began to lay the groundwork for a plan so quiet and so weighty that it would reshape every assumption they had made about me, and they would know, without question, that I had never been the outsider they treated me as. I found the folder late one evening as the Georgia sun was retreating behind the pines and casting long shadows across the living room floor. Dust motes drifted in the air like silent witnesses. I had gone to retrieve my reading glasses from the side cabinet, only to discover the drawer unlocked, papers peeking out. I paused, heart fluttering, with an urgent hush. This smelled of intent. I reached in and unfolded a crisp photocopy. The first document stared at me, a psychological evaluation, printed with official-looking headers and a bold, red seal. I blinked, adjusting my glasses to read. The diagnosis? Mild delusional disorder. Recommends continued supervision by a responsible adult. Limitations on self-directed decision-making. At the bottom, a signature. My name. My signature. My heart pounded like a warning bell. I flipped the page. There, in my handwriting, albeit smudged and rushed, were the words, "Admission to Green Meadows Nursing Facility, effective immediately." Below it, blank spaces labeled Legal Guardian, Emergency Contact, and Decision-Making Capacity, full. The lines were pre-scored. Someone simply had to fill them out. And above it, someone had written unmistakably, "Urgent, require immediate action." I sank to the floor. My knees hit wood, my breath locked, but my mind raced. Whoever had done this had wanted me gone. Not just overlooked. Gone. Locked away. My hand trembled as I touched the photocopy, my mother's Bible resting on my lap. I thought of her prayers. I thought of mine now. Less pleas, more resolve. From the next room, quiet voices drifted in, like shade-coated conspiracies. I stood, clutching the papers, and edged toward the doorway. The living room light filtered across my evening dress. I heard them, low, crisp, cold. "It will work," my daughter-in-law whispered, voice clipped and urgent. "She's already confused about her keys and bills. One fainting episode, hospital protocol, and I just sign at intake. Easy." "And what about the lawyer?" I heard my son's voice, thin, hesitant, laden with unwillingness. "He is covered," she replied. "We'll feed it to the court. She's a burden." My stomach turned. They were ready to commit me, and they believed they could finish it quietly. My son compromised by default. They had all become architects of my erasure. I retreated to my room, papers clutched against my chest. My vision blurred with disbelief. Whoever had created the documents thought I could be convinced, that I would go willingly, because I was old, needy, broken. But I was none of those things. I lay awake the rest of the night, mind alight. I could not confront them yet, not until I had safety, proof, a path. So I organized everything. The red-sealed evaluation, the admission request, their recorded voices, my bank statements, still showing half the utilities in my name, the mortgage agreements, and my photocopy of the deed noting I held 55% ownership. I pulled out my tablet and typed an email to my lawyer. We'd spoken before about nothing yet. I wanted his advice first. I waited, agonizing, until I heard his ding. I opened his reply. Meet me Tuesday. Bring documents. Don't let them near you in meantime. Be safe. It felt like carrying a lifeline. Next, I began backing up evidence. I built a timeline in notes. Date I signed deed, every mortgage payment, every contractor call. I transcribed the audio from my daughter-in-law's conversation, date stamped and labeled. I placed everything into a secure folder labeled Martha Defense. Then I reached out to my former student Lisa, now a journalist at Atlanta's local TV network, WSB. I called her softly, my voice yielding only enough urgency to let her know the story was bigger than loneliness. She agreed to listen. I emailed her the key facts, but withheld names, yet still caused the anchor's pulse to quicken. Everything was unfolding within the confines of the law, but outside their expectations, they believed their quiet plot sealed. But I, even that elderly nanny, had built walls of evidence stronger than any forged paper or furtive whisper. By morning, the Georgia dawn was bright and clear, mocking the darkness of their intent. I placed the red-sealed evaluation into an envelope marked Evidence. I tucked the folder into my tote bag alongside my smartphone, where I had recorded every call, every audio snippet. I packed a spare set of clothes and a list of emergency contacts. I rehearsed words behind closed eyes. I have rights. You are violating my civil liberties. I refuse to be erased. Then I sent another message to my lawyer. I will arrive Tuesday. Let's start now. As I set the phone down, I met my reflection in the dresser mirror. Head held high, shoulders squared, eyes steady. Not fear, not panic, not disgrace. Determination. A woman who had lived with compassion now lived with purpose. They might have tried to carve me out, but I had carved back. With facts, with witness, with law. I was still here. I had the papers. I had the voice, and they would learn soon enough. You cannot commit someone who refuses to be silenced. I set my tote beside the door and closed my eyes briefly. In that stillness, I tasted possibility. A plan wasn't just taking shape, it was alive, because I refused to be erased, because I was not done. I found the hidden cameras late one afternoon while fixing the hinges on the back door. I noticed 2 small lenses in the siding of our screened porch and another in the hallway landing near the guest bedroom. Each bore a tiny sticker, Live Security Feed, Property of Johnson Family. My breath caught in my chest. This was beyond monitoring. They were watching me. I stood still, heart pounding. My mind raced as it had when I first discovered the fake psych evaluation and the forged nursing home application. But this was active surveillance. I slipped between brushing past the hallway cam and tapped record on my phone. Then I headed back to the kitchen where my daughter-in-law and son were chatting quietly over iced tea and cupcakes. They were speaking low, intimate tones. I crept closer until their voices registered, crisp and cold. "She is so deluded," I heard my daughter-in-law hiss. "You saw how she looked when I said nanny. She thinks she still belongs. We need something bigger." My son answered, his tone measured, almost exhausted. "Hospital procedure works faster when it looks like confusion. We wait for her to slip again, fall. Then you take the papers, sign me in. It's clean, clean." My fists tightened. Already I recognized the plan. They continued. The plan was not just hospital. They wanted my name off the utility bills. Done with the deed, all links severed. My grandson's rooms repainted, my pictures gone. My heart pounded, but I breathed slow. The phone recorded. My pulse steadied. The evidence stacked itself. I felt strong. I focused. This was justice in motion. Later that evening, I retreated to my bedroom and unlocked the phone. I replayed the recording, Listened to her sneer, her cold strategy. Each sentence rang clear like a church bell. I imported the audio into a simple prosumer editing app, trimmed extraneous sounds, left only the voices and their plan. I added timestamps. I exported a clean clip. I plugged in a USB drive I kept from my late husband's law firm, a symbolic echo of our old life. I saved the audio clip in 3 formats: .mp3, WAV, and a text transcription. I labeled the folder, Property of Martha Johnson, Evidence. Next, I began collecting the camera footage itself. I navigated through the security system settings. Luckily, it was simple and unsecured. I found recordings of me going to get water, repairing a loose shutter, feeding the dog, a normal life that they were watching intently. I downloaded 3 hours of footage and added them to the USB under the label Footage Cam, ABC. I sat back in my chair, listening to the austere silence of purposeful work. Then I called my attorney in Atlanta, the document lawyer I had driven after he got a flat on his way to a hearing 3 years ago. His voice was soft and professional when he answered. "Have you found anything else?" he asked. "Yes," I said, feeling steadier than I had in days. "I have video and audio of them, plotting, planning to sign me into a nursing facility. I have all 3 cam feeds and the hushed voices. Can you get the paperwork filed Tuesday?" His tone became determined. "Yes, we begin with injunction. I will prepare for emergency hearing." I hung up and composed an email to Lisa, my former student turned WSB-TV journalist. I attached a picture of the cam lens and wrote, "Exclusive surveillance footage shows daughter-in-law and son plotting to declare me mentally unfit and commit me mother of household into nursing home. I have audio, video, timeline, please call." Within 15 minutes, I received a reply. "Got it. I'll call tomorrow." For the first time in months, I slept with a sense of control returning. I had turned their weapons into evidence. I closed my eyes, thinking of the cameras now disabled with tape, recorded and removed. Tomorrow, I would retrieve them fully. But tonight, I held the USB to my chest and whispered, "I am not afraid of your plans. I am not invisible. I am still here." I arrived at the attorney's office on Tuesday at 9 a.m. sharp. As I walked through the doors, the scent of leather-bound files and polished oak welcomed me. My lawyer, Mr. Davidson, rose and offered a firm handshake. "Martha, are you ready?" he asked. I nodded, my heart steady. Together, we reviewed the packet on the conference table. The original deed naming me as 55% owner, past mortgage statements, property tax receipts in my name, and invoices from contractors I had arranged and paid. Interspersed were copies of my compiled evidence: the forged psych evaluation, the nursing home placement form, the audio files from the USB, and the hidden camera footage. Davidson arranged the documents. We file a partition sale petition in Fulton County Superior Court. That forces division or sale of the property you're co-owning without their consent. He paused, giving me a direct look. "Your ownership gives you this right. We can move quickly. I'll file this afternoon." I exhaled slowly, feeling both relief and tension. This was not vengeance. It was justice, eroded by law. It was a reclaiming of home and dignity. The clerk accepted our filing. I left the courthouse with a stamped copy of the petition, my first official step toward regaining my place. That afternoon, I sent the USB with selected excerpts of evidence to Lisa, the journalist. I pasted a short note. "My name is Martha Johnson. I am the 55% owner of the house called Family. But family tried to remove me mentally, physically, legally. I own more than a kitchen, more than crumbs. This is my fight." Despite a weekend away, I received an email that Monday night. "We'll air your story Wednesday at 5. Fear and hope tangled inside me as the words settled. On Wednesday morning, I saw the headline flash. "Georgia grandmother takes legal action after family snares her rights. Just Nanny no more." My phone buzzed, messages from friends I had not heard from in years, saying, "We saw you, we support you, respect to you, Martha." Inside the living room of my own house, my attorney and I watched the broadcast. The anchor appeared behind the desk, calm and measured. Tonight's top story. A respected grandmother in suburban Atlanta is fighting back after being publicly relegated to just the nanny. We have exclusive documents and footage showing her daughter-in-law and son allegedly discussing ways to have her institutionalized and alienated. The report played clips, a snippet of the recording. We wait for her to slip again, a freeze frame from camera footage showing the lens peeking out from the hallway. They discussed legal rights of co-owners and how partition law allows selling without family approval. The anchor summarized, Mrs. Johnson holds 55% of the home's title and has paid taxes and upkeep for years. She filed a partition sale petition to legally reclaim what she already owns. The broadcast transitioned to a Vox Pop segment, interviews with neighbors responding, I always knew Mrs. Johnson had a heart of gold. I saw her snow shoveling last winter and bringing over soup when my son fell ill. It was heartbreaking to hear how she was treated. No one deserves that. I felt tears sting my eyes, not from shame, but from validation. For decades, I had been the quiet strength behind this home. Suddenly, I was seen. My story was seen. Within hours, social media blew up. On Facebook's WSB-TV post, comments poured in. Bless her heart, what an incredible woman. They underestimated her. Don't mess with a grandmother's love. Share this until everyone remembers what family means. On YouTube, the video had thousands of likes and shares. One viewer commented, they tried to erase her, but she's leaving a legacy instead. That evening, the Johnsons returned home to find dozens of text alerts from friends, clergy, neighbors, and even distant cousins, all saying the same thing. Are you okay? The hush that used to greet me was replaced with whispers, now directed at them. I sat quietly in the living room, sipping tea, watching their faces in the reflection from the television screen. They entered with the caution of trespassers. My daughter-in-law tried to speak, voice shaky. Mom, we didn't mean for it to be like this. My son looked stricken. He avoided meeting my eyes. Mom, we can fix this. But I already had. I had called attention. I had filed papers. I had made history, not just for me, but for every silent elder pushed aside and silenced. I rose, feeling the steady ache of every sacrifice I had made, mixed with the satisfaction of being heard. The court will address our disagreement, I said. Until then, please respect my space. I did not ask them to apologize. I only asked them to be honest. They nodded, humbled, uncertain how to reclaim what they had lost. Late that night, I thanked my attorney in a message. You helped me reclaim more than property. Thank you. He replied simply, you reclaimed your voice. I closed my eyes with that thought. I could not undo the wrongs that had been done, but I had righted the most essential one. I was no longer invisible. I had proven that strength can be quiet, justice can be lawful, and respect, long overdue, can still be earned. The morning sun gleamed through the curtains as I stepped onto the front porch, clipboard in hand, feeling strangely buoyed. A week had passed since my story aired. The neighborhood had shifted. I walked slowly down the driveway and nearly stopped in my tracks at the curb. Pinned to the mailbox was a neatly printed poster on white cardstock. A family who treats their mother as an unwanted guest will lose their home. Below it someone had scrawled, in thick black marker, show respect or leave. A ripple of something, relief, disbelief, passed through me. Neighbors were not staying silent. I pocketed the poster and continued to the yard, where a sleek for sale sign stood firm in the grass. Large letters read, for sale, homeowner dispute, contact agent. Beneath it, the realtor's name glowed like verdict. I pressed my palm against the sign, their plan in cold text. Across the street, an elderly couple walked their dog and looked toward me. Mrs. Thompson stopped, her face soft with empathy. She offered a small wave before continuing on. I realized then that my fight had never truly been mine alone. It had echoed in front lawns and across hedges. I walked back inside and found my son hovering by the kitchen island, his posture tight. My daughter-in-law stood too, hands clasped, eyes glistening. They looked like people awaiting judgment. Mom, please, my son started, voice shaky. You always said you wanted to keep this house for us, for our family. I placed the poster and the realtor's sign down on the counter, arranging them like legal documents. They stared at the printouts, mouths open. I folded my arms and spoke slowly. I did want that. I still want that, for those walls to hold us together. But you two made a choice. You treated me as invisible. I had two options: stay silent and disappear, or stand for myself. My daughter-in-law's face softened, tears spilling down. We never meant to hurt you, she whispered. It just happened. We didn't think. My son stepped forward, voice thick. Mom, I'm sorry. I should have defended you. I was ashamed. I was weak. They expected me to crumble. Perhaps they thought emotion would drag me back into submission. But I stood firm, remembering the evidence, the law, and the later support of neighbors and strangers alike. I placed a hand on the poster. This is not about punishment. It is about respect. It is about truth. You can either apologize and earn back your place, or I can move forward. It was surreal. The living room had become a courtroom. Their guilt hung in the air like dust. I tapped the real estate sign. That house is half mine. I can sell. I can walk away. But I still hope, if you can look me in the eye and mean it, that someday this can be ours again. My daughter-in-law sobbed, stepping forward to hug me. My son stood still, tears in his eyes. They couldn't say the words just yet, but their eyes pleaded, please. Later that day, a neighbor named Carla asked to share her story. She filmed our chat in the kitchen, her phone quietly recording. Carla spoke of the Christmas I brought casseroles during her husband's surgery recovery. She spoke of the nights she saw me shoveling snow off the driveway so guests could arrive safely. She spoke of how I'd once lent her money after a layoff. The clip was sweet, genuine, honest, the antidote to their scorn. That evening, Carla posted the video online. Within hours, it gathered comments like, "This is what family looks like. Grandmother of the Year, hands down. My respect for her strength." It was as though the digital world had taken her side. My attorney reached out that night. I filed a motion for mediation. If both parties agree, maybe we can find a resolution without court. He made it sound hopeful, but clear. The ball was in their court. That night, my son and daughter-in-law sat beside each other on the sofa. They held hands, offering each other silent strength. My daughter-in-law's voice was soft, cracked. Will you stay? Will you stay with us if we show respect?" I looked at them, choosing my answer. We can begin again, even from the ground up, but respect is not a handshake, it is action. My son nodded. We will make it right. They withdrew the for sale sign. 2 days later, a new poster appeared in the window, "Family welcome here." I realized then that I had not set out to destroy a house. I set out to restore a home. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea, looking out at the lights of the cul-de-sac. I felt the years settle, some lost, some regained. And I felt hope. I had taken action. I had reclaimed respect. I had given them a choice, to honor me or face my departure. Now, they were choosing honor. And that, I thought, is how you return from being erased. You do not fight fire with fire. You fight with the truth. I closed my eyes, listening to the house, now alive with whispers of reconciliation, and whispered to myself, "Mother is fine. And now, so is this home." If this story struck a chord in your heart, if it reminded you of the strength it takes to smile through silence, and the courage it takes to walk away with dignity, then I hope you'll stay a while, because here, on Grandma True Stories, we don't just tell tales. We remember the truth the world tried to bury. Every story comes from a woman who stayed quiet too long, and now she's finally ready to speak. So if you believe wisdom should never be silenced, if you know that sometimes the softest voice holds the sharpest truth, then hit that subscribe button, turn on the notifications, and share this with someone who needs to hear it. Because revenge may have an expiration date, but dignity endures forever. This is Grandma True Stories, and I'll be here whenever you're ready to listen.